it's been since then. Anyone have anything to share from any of that?
I noticed this Yom Kippur that fasting was much easier than any other year.
Oh, why do you think is that?
I don't know. When I started keeping really strict holiday, like 8-9 years ago, it was very difficult. I was getting headaches in the middle of the day. I couldn't do anything. I needed to take medications to survive. I was just miserable. And every year it's easier and easier. And this year it was,
Maybe your body is learning.
I don't know, it was the easiest fasting for me.
Good. Did you
It
prepare
wasn't
better?
the easiest year, but the holiday was.
The fast was easier. Okay, or maybe God just gave you a break. At least that shouldn't be hard.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyone else? I know I fast very easily, but I always prepare well for like Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av. You know, I drink a lot in advance, and I really, I don't know, it usually makes it very easy. I think that's just, to me, the main thing is to drink a lot. But anyone else, anything from Yom Kippur they remember? Or Sukkot? Or some
I just wanted to say that this year I did Kiddush properly. Like you said, 4 Kiddushes on Rosh Hashanah, right? And then I did 4 Kiddushes on Sukkot. Also, and then I tried to do Kiddushes for Shminai Atzeret and Simchat Torah, and there is no special Kiddush in Siddur for that.
It's a Kiddush for the holiday. It's the same Kiddush for Sukkot. It's the same Kiddush for all of them.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you find it in the Siddur after the prayer for the holidays, the prayer for the Shalosh Regalim, the Amidah. You find right there the Kiddush.
Because Kiddush is listed, it says Kiddush for evening and Kiddush for day, you know,
right.
Separate.
That's for the Shabbos.
It specifically says for Pesach, Sukkot.
Right, so that same Kiddush for Pesach and Sukkot is also for Shmini Atzeret, exactly. Okay. That's the Kiddush.
Yeah.
That's the Kiddush. And Bella. And so nice. All right. So I hope everyone else that joined had a good holiday season and had things that they maybe did now. Rachel, we see you twice. Thank you twice. Things that they were able to do this year that they never did before. Like Orly said, she was able to fast like never before, and Rivka said she was able to make the Kiddush properly for the first time. Anyone else had anything they'd like to share from the Yom Kippur or Sukkot or Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah? Any special experiences? Any things that were especially meaningful this year?
I feel like this year it was more, I was more, I don't know, maybe prepared too, because I read up front what is going to be said there. But I felt more calm for some reason.
You felt more aware, you're saying, more
aware,
more knowledgeable, and therefore more like in tune, not like overwhelmed and like I got no clue what's flying.
Probably, you're right.
It makes a big difference, for sure, of course, for all of us when we know what's going to be, even if we do it every year, but like a year is a long time, so we can forget. So when we know a little more and we can do a little more and we're a little more in sync, it makes, for sure, as you're saying, more calm. We're able to absorb the energy of the holiday and less, overwhelmed by the details of the holiday.
And less distracted from what was going around me. I was more focused, I think.
That's amazing, because I think it's so easy to get distracted, very, very easy. And it's it's a gift to be able to just focus and take it in and be aware that this is a special time, Yom Kippur, of cleansing, and Sukkot and Shmini Atzeret and Simchat Torah of joy. And we want to take it in. Yeah. Your hand is raised.
Oh, I'm on my phone, sorry. So my experience was, well, I had a full house. I had 7 people come.
Oh,
And
wow. 7.
Right, because my kids and wives and granddaughter was so full.
Wow.
At the same time, like it's hard. I was focusing on my family, which is great. And it's such a blessing. And I'm so glad. As far as like, I don't know, I felt like I was forgetting everything that I was learning though, because I was so
You were so distracted.
kind of, but it was a great distraction. And it was for sure spiritual because I had my whole family around me and we were all involved in the holiday, but definitely some things that I was trying to do kind of went to the wayside as far as davening and that. But
So I think it's like a balance. Like on one hand,
right.
the holidays are supposed to be a time of joy, and definitely having your family there added a lot to your joy and to your husband's joy. So that was a great move in the right direction, because what's more joyous than being with your children and grandchildren? So that's amazing. So that was a very appropriate spiritual thing, to be very joyous and celebrate with your family. And, you know, and eye to the future, if this would happen again, like God willing, hopefully it will many, many, many times, is to sort of like plan it out in advance.
You know what? I think part of it, Mrs. Turin, was that when I wasn't observant when my kids were young. So part of it too is I don't know like what you do, what you skip, you know, that kind of a thing. So I think that's part of it too. There's a lot of things in there that I have questions about, just that I didn't even have questions about before because there weren't young kids. Kids weren't young when, you know, I was this observant. So it's all good.
It's all good. And I'm
right.
just saying in advance, it's good to just plan it out and think, well, what's my priority? Like you're saying, what's my priority? Am I going to be helping my daughter-in-laws and therefore not able to pray? So then let me figure out in advance, what are the prayers I should make sure to do? If I need to make sure I'm doing my own learning or my own Tehillim or things like that, you have to like, you know, just like scope the whole thing out. So then what's important doesn't get lost in the shuffle. And then some things are not going to happen that would happen if it was just you and your husband alone. But thank God you and your husband aren't alone. So that's a very nice thing. So it's a great thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's a gift. It's a tremendous gift. And like
now
everything,
now that you're talking about it, it's like I got to write it down because it's always during those times where you can't write those.
You can't ask. There's no exactly. You have all the question when there's nobody to ask. Exactly.
Thank you.
Exactly. I was saying, like before the next holiday, like Passover, if they're going to come,
right,
scope it out. Like, okay, this is what's important. This is what I want to make sure to do, and this is what I'm going to have a pass on because I'm going to be busy with the wonderful, joyous commandment of hosting my family. So that's very nice. That's
thank you so much.
nice. I'm glad God gave you that gift because that's a gift. Family is definitely a gift.
Amen.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Anyone else had any thoughts on their holiday if they want to share? So,
we talked about that I'm gonna fast on the Yom Kippur. I could not.
oh, did you fast partially?
Yes.
Good.
That, most of the day, yes, I fasted,
Good.
but a little bit, yes. Not full day. I was fasted.
How long did you fast? I was thinking of you actually. I was thinking of you because that was right before Yom Kippur. We spoke about how important it is to fast. And I was thinking about you on Yom Kippur and hoping you were going to be able to make it. How long were you able to fast until?
No, at least from 12:30 of the day, lunchtime. I had light lunch. I had to go to work this day.
Right,
And
homemade.
just with somebody, just together, we just had some light lunch, and that's it.
So you know what? You really gave God as much as you felt you could this year. And next year you will give more. There's someone on this group now. I'm not going to say the name in case they wouldn't want me to, but I remember very clearly one of the years, probably one of the first years we had the class, and it was after Yom Kippur. And she said she really meant to fast the whole day, but whatever, something happened. People came to her house and whatever, she had to serve them food. So she wasn't able to do it the whole day like she wanted to, but then the next year she did. So now,
Yeah,
just like I was saying that you have a, to the other woman, time to prepare. Next holiday, you'll be prepped. Your kids are going to be there, God willing, and you'll know how to balance that out with the holiday spiritual responsibilities. So now you have a year to prepare, and God willing, I'm giving you a blessing that next year, Yom Kippur, you will for sure fast everything, and it won't even be a question in your mind. It will be so
Walter was fasting
obvious.
for me. He's telling me that I am fasting for you. Don't worry.
It doesn't count. That was very nice of him, but you got to do it yourself. But next year you can fast together. You can both fast.
Yeah.
You can both fast, and it will be, and you can do it. And it's just like Orly said. I don't think you were on when Orly was speaking, and Orly said, like, Orly, did you say 8 years ago? I think she said 8 years ago, she started fasting religiously, the whole thing, which I assume means no food, no water for that whole 25 hours. And it was very difficult. And she said, every year it got a little bit easier.
Little by little, yeah.
And this year, she already was a veteran faster, no big deal. So, next year you're going to, when you make the commitment, I know for myself, I think I shared this or not, I don't remember. It was a year my son, who is currently just turned 27. So it's 27 years ago. So I was quite expectant on Yom Kippur because he was born like less than 10 days later, 9 days later. And I was sitting on my porch, and a neighbor came by, and she's like, "You're not fasting, are you?" Of course I'm fasting. And she's like, "I wanted to fast Yom Kippur, but it was just like too hard for me." She said, "How could you be fasting?" And I said, "Because I have no choice. I mean, it doesn't even dawn on me to have a choice. It's Yom Kippur. I mean, it's Yom Kippur. You fast, like, no option. So therefore, it's not really difficult. So you have to get into that space of like, it's Yom Kippur. I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to drink. It's going to be fine. It's Yom Kippur. And guess what? Next year, you will do it. The whole 25 hours. You and Walter could do it together. The whole 25 hours.
Yeah.
No problem. I'm already telling you now. You'll see.
Thank you.
But
We will.
thank you for giving God really valiant efforts of trying. And he appreciates every moment of your trying. He really does. He does. And that's what we always can rely on, that whatever our efforts are, perfect, flawed, God says, I appreciate all efforts. All efforts.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone else have something they want to share from their holiday experience? So thank God mine was very meaningful. Trying to think back to Yom Kippur, it's a very long time ago, right? But it was meaningful. And I was in synagogue much more than I thought I would be, because I didn't think I'd get there at all. But I did. And that I really enjoyed. I really appreciated that. It was very cleansing, which it always is. You leave Yom Kippur feeling very, very clean, because we are very, very clean. So that was great. And the Sukkot holiday was joyous. It was joyous. I was able to be in New York for part of it. That was amazing. Joy just there for the taking. When I came back the last days of the holiday, I pushed very hard to be in a very joyous space, because I knew I was taking joy for a whole year and I want to have a happy year. So I just selfishly made sure to be very joyous and dance a lot. All right, so what are we doing now? So what I was thinking, first I thought, that's why I sent 2 different messages today. And anyway, WhatsApp wasn't working. I first thought we would continue what we were doing before we took a break for all the holidays, which was that portion in the letter, a deep analysis of repentance. I thought, well, that was very good timing then, because that was the focus on repentance as we were going through repenting, going through Yom Kippur. But now we're past that. So I don't know if that's what we should be continuing. So for now, for today, we're gonna do some thoughts on the Parsha. If anyone has any ideas of what they would like us to, the next section, let me know. I'll have a little time to think about it. This was I didn't have that much time, but that's okay. So this week's portion is the portion of the flood, the portion of Noah, Parshat Noach. And there was like two ideas that I wanted to share on the Torah portion and see how we could apply them to our own lives. There's of course so many ideas, and just as soon as I decided I was to do the Torah portion, I was just like flooded with all these different amazing ideas from the Torah portion, but I had to select, so I selected two. So I want to give a little overview of a thought on this whole concept of the Great Flood. This Torah portion is almost exclusively talking about this one very significant event that happened, this great flood that wiped away all of humanity besides 9 people. The most catastrophic thing humanity has ever experienced, which is found, not surprisingly, in all ancient cultures all over the world. There's references to it, not only biblical, because it's something the world experienced. So it's something in very ancient documentation, it's referenced as this great flood that destroyed the world. So, but God's not punitive. So even though, of course, this was a great punishment, but it also was a great purification for the world. And that's why actually it rained. Do you know how many days it rained for? Anyone know? How many days the rain came down?
7 days.
How many?
120.
No.
40.
40. Yes. I don't even know who said the correct answer. Yes, whoever did. 40 days and 40 nights. I actually realized today was 40 and a half,
It
but
rained
okay.
7
won't
days
ruin that.
first, and then it's flooded. No,
Right. So it came down as rain, and then
Oh.
when people still didn't repent, which is sort of weird, like how in the world? It took, by the way, Noah 120 years to build this ark. For 120 years, he's warning the world what's going to happen. No, 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 no. And then it starts raining. Oh, a coincidence, conspiracy theories, this is, it's 120 years still, they didn't. And the opposite, they said, we're going to kill him. We're going to let him go into the ark. But do we take this seriously that we're going to change our ways? No, of course not. So it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The world was flooded for an entire year. Noah was in his ark for a year. It was a year until literally the earth became dry again. But the flood waters were for 40 days and 40 nights, but they so flooded the world that it took a year for the floods to recede. Everything is very precise. Nothing is random by God. It was 40 and not 120 and not 50 and not 30 and not 10. Any of those numbers could have done the trick. There's a reason why God had it rain for 40 days and 40 nights. And it's actually parallel to the legal qualification for how much water has to be in a ritual bath called a mikvah. So in a mikvah, in a ritual pool, according to Jewish law, there has to be 40, now this is a Hebrew quantitative measurement called sa'ah, 40 sa'ah of water. Because our sages say you need 40 sa'ah of water for a person's body to be completely submerged. Most mikvahs have more. But you have to have a minimal of this quantity of 40 sa'ah for it to be a valid kosher mikvah. 40 sa'ah, 40 days and 40 nights of rain. Interesting, rainwater. The 40 sa'ah, of course, has to be, as we know, probably rainwater. What's a real water for a mikvah is rainwater. It's interesting because when we talk about the waters of the flood, the waters are called the waters of Noah, which might not sound so nice because Noah was the good guy of the story, right? He's the hero. He's the only righteous person on the entire planet Earth besides his wife and like one of his kids. And yet they're called the waters of Noah. Like if these were just punitive waters meant to destroy the evil, why should Noah be blamed for these waters? It wasn't his fault the rest of the world was like that. But they're called the waters of Noah because Noah implies nachas, tranquility, peace, comfort, calmness. They were called the waters of Noah because these waters were not only punitive, they were also cleansing the world. They were washing away the impurities. That was the idea of the waters of Noah. So it's very interesting because we're comparing these waters of Noah to the waters of a mikvah, right? 40 days of rain, 40 of the mikvah, waters of Noah, the great flood, the mikvah. And it also relates to us as well, because it's explained that the great flood we personally experience with the waters that rage and wear away at us as well. Traditionally, our sages view those as the great waters that we contend with. They say are the stresses, the worries, the burdens of financial situations, because financial situations have always been stressful. It is not an invention of the 21st century. There's always been financial stresses, obviously, probably in a much more basic level than we experience, but there's always been those waters. But there's these raging waters we contend with. In your life, it might be financial, it might be something else. There's lots of other waters that could be wearing away at us. It could be in relationships, it could be in health, it could be with children. But there's these waters, what our sages call the great waters, that pound at us, that eat away at us. And those are our own personal flood waters that we have to deal with. And it's good to remember that the great flood was not only punitive, it was to cleanse, it was to purify, it was to remove the negativity, it was to bring peace and calmness and comfort. Like we said, these are the waters of Noah. Noah, peace, calmness, comfort. That's what these waters that are wearing away at us are supposed to be accomplishing. So it's sort of like, well, how do these waters that crash in our lives, how is all these things that are crashing on me, how is this bringing me peace, comfort, and tranquility? Or in essence, the connection here between my stresses, the flood, and a mikvah. Because we're saying the mikvah and the flood, 40-40, purification, and I also have these waters, and they're also supposed to bring this purification. How does it all work together? So the inner dimension of all of this is work. How unsurprising, right? It's always about work. So the work here is the work of nullifying ourselves. That's the work that we always have to do. We always come back to that work. It's interesting because the word nullification in the Hebrew, this only works in the Hebrew, is the same letters as the word for immersing in a mikvah. So the immersion in a mikvah is supposed to be an act of nullification, which you could sometimes feel if you're sensitive to these things. Because again, remember we said it has to be 40 sa because it has to be enough water to completely contain your body. So when you go into that mikvah, you are completely immersed in it. You're completely surrendering to it. You're completely giving yourself over. And that's like you and God. So when you physically go into a physical ritual pool of the mikvah waters and you immerse in that pool and you nullify yourself and allow those waters to penetrate every fold of your body, that's in a very physical way nullifying yourself to God. And that causes the elevation. That enables you to be a vehicle for holiness. And that was the intent of the Great Flood, to wash the world, to immerse the world in like this great mikvah, this great ritual pool of purification, of nullification, to be a vehicle for God again. And that's the same that goes on in our life. So in our life, when we have waters crashing on us, if it's financial crashes or relationship crashes or health crashes, whatever are those waters we are contending with. Sometimes we generously have many waters that we're contending with. It disturbs us. It makes it harder for us. But the idea is for us to get out of our own complacency, to get out of the I, that I fill up all the space. Because when those crashes happen, what I'm supposed to do is turn to God and nullify myself to God and understand everything is in God's hands, which are very good, safe hands. And when I do that, it can all wash away because that's its purpose. The purpose of the flood was ultimately to purify and cleanse. The purpose of the floods in my life, the same goal, to purify, to cleanse, for me to nullify myself so I could be open to godliness. So I could be more and more a vehicle for him. So sometimes when we're going through things, and it could really feel sometimes like punishment. Like, why is God? I mean, I know it's all God. Why is God being so harsh to me? Why is God putting me through? It's all him. I'm only blaming him. So why is he putting me through all this? But it's not punishment. Sometimes it's what we need to cleanse away the negativity. Now, obviously, if you know that's the goal and you're focused on the goal, it can happen very quickly. So you shouldn't have to have all these flood waters raging around you and crashing on you, because you should achieve the purpose to nullify ourselves to God. So we don't need the cleansing process anymore. And the waters could just be Noach's waters, waters of comfort, physically and spiritually, cleansing, purifying, and tranquil waters. So that was an idea from the Torah portion. And I just thought it's something that we could all find so relevant, because of course the idea of studying the Torah is for us to grow from it, for us to become better people from it, for us to look at the world in a different light. And I really thought that could be such an applicable lesson, is that really when we're going through these things, to just say, all right, this is God seemingly being punitive, but really it's Noah's waters. Really, it's just for me to remember him. It's just for me to turn to him. It's just for me to acknowledge him. And when I remember him and turn to him and acknowledge him, that was the point. They don't need to happen anymore because they fulfill their purpose. It's the mikvah. It's the immersion. It's the nullification. So obviously this theme we've discussed before. Someone had a question?
Yeah, I was saying, like, what if it's something so big and you kind of notice, I mean, you like keep telling yourself like, oh, it's Hashem, like he always wants the best for us, but it continues on, like something terrible that's going on, like a constant, on a constant basis.
So you're saying you did the nullification, it's God, he wants the best for you, but it should be over then. That's the system, and it's not.
Yeah.
I think in that case, what I would do is first I would check, like, is my basic security system in place? I would have someone look at my mezuzahs. If there's a man involved, the tefillin, to make sure those are all kosher, because mezuzahs and tefillin are our security system. And if they're not intact, if they're damaged in some way, that could allow negativity to creep in. I would probably just also use the basic tools, the most basic tools we know of bringing God into our life and bringing God's blessings into our life, which I would view as saying Tehillim, saying Psalms, because the Tehillim we know gives us kindness and compassion. And I would also increase in charity every day. It doesn't have to be a lot in terms of the amount, but the act of giving is very, very powerful. And I would see if things ease up at that point, meaning checking the tefillin and mezuzahs, adding every day in an increase in Psalms and Tehillim, and adding every day in a certain, daily giving of charity, Doesn't make, not saying the amount, but the act of charity. And I would see if that helps shift things. And if it doesn't, I would probably speak to someone and say, what do you advise me to do? Because I know it's all God. And seemingly he wants something from me. And I guess I'm not giving it to him, because if I was, this wouldn't be happening. He could do anything. He can do anything. So he could surely take care of this. If he's not, it means its goal wasn't achieved. What I was supposed to accomplish, what this didn't accomplish yet. So help me, guide me. This is what I did. Tefillin, mezuzahs, charities, Tillim, and the situation is still continuing. What should I do? Or I would write into the Rebbe and ask that exact same question. What should I do? It's not going away. It should go away. I'm nullifying myself. I know it's God. I know it's good. I'm accepting. I'm nullified. I'm so holy. And the situation's continuing. So what now? What more do I need to give you? Obviously something more. What more? I remember speaking with someone who, it's not, humorous, but he was telling me how he had been through a lot of different things, and he never thought he'd be as holy as he had become. Like through the process, God put him in this situation. To get out of it, he had to have a lot of things. Then God put him in this situation, and then he had more things. And he said at this point, he thought he never in his life envisioned he'd be as holy as he is currently. And I said, that was probably the point. We shortchange ourselves. We don't know how holy we can be and how holy God expects us to be. But God knows exactly what we're capable of. And sometimes he creates situations and pushes buttons for us to realize that we can and really need to do much more. But that would be my game plan in that situation. That's what I would think is appropriate thing.
Or like if it's, I guess, someone else involved and they're not believing in it as much.
You do your part. You just got to do your part. God can do the other parts. You got to do your part. You could say, but there's two people involved and I'm doing it, but they're not doing it, but it's both of let God deal with it. He's very capable. What you're supposed to gain, you got to go through and gain, and then God will remove it from you. Well, how can he remove it from me if two of us are together? God's capable. Don't worry about it. So we can't always affect another person, and we give that over to God. We just do our part. And we trust God that he will do his part as well, that he will be honest and trustworthy, which he is. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this?
I do, sorry. What if you get like a clear bracha about something, and like from the writing in the Igros, like it's very like straight up clear, like is anything like exactly what you were asking about from the rabbi, right? And then in the letter, like my example, whatever, it says, you can't rely on miracles, you actually have to put the effort, but this and this will be completely good. Is that necessarily like, I guess like it's a bracha from him, but like, I guess there's no specific like thing telling me what I need to do, but I'm saying like, besides for X, Y, and Z, do you think there's extra I should do? Like maybe say Tehillim for it, and then go and put the effort?
I always think saying Tehillim helps. I always think saying Tehillim helps. Tehillim brings down God's kindness and compassion. It's a win-win thing. There's never a loss in saying Tehillim. It's like giving charity. You can never have a loss in giving charity. Oh, but I meant to give 10%, but I accidentally gave 12%. It's no loss. It's only a gain. So in certain areas like that, the more. It's only good. So even if you got a very clear blessing, is it still good to say to him and give charity and get your mezuzah and tefillin checked? Yes, it's always good. All that is always universally applicable. Always helps. Even the very act. I've known people that the very act of checking the mezuzahs, even they were fine, they were completely kosher, but as they were checking their mezuzahs, miracles happened. The very act of checking the mezuzahs, the very act of checking the tefillin already is a very good protective measure that sort of like sets off your security system and helps it, you know, restarts it, even when they're completely kosher. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this? So the basic idea, because this is so applicable to me, to you, to all of us, is as we go through things in life, sometimes we feel a lot of raging waters, a lot of crashing waters, a lot of floods. And just remember, it's all God. And these are Noah's waters. And the goal is for me, just like by the great flood, for me to nullify myself to God. For me to, what does it mean to nullify myself to God? Those are like fancy words. What translate those words into English? What that means is to recognize this is all God, to be aware it's God, and to turn to him saying, hey, this is you. You could say, well, I made a mistake, da, 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 da. Well, someone else made a mistake, you know. Doesn't make a difference. But I did make a mistake. It doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a difference if you were negligent. Doesn't make a difference if you were spaced out. Doesn't make a difference if you were wrong. God runs the world. Everything that happens is him. So when we have all these crashing pressures on us, he's creating them. And my nullification is my awareness it's him, and my turning to him and saying, I know it's you. And I know you're doing this in my life. And maybe the general broad stroke is you're doing this, so I should remember you. So I should turn to you. So I am. I'm turning to you. I'm remembering you. And I know, and I'm trusting that that will accomplish the goal. The goal was accomplished. So the waters can recede because they achieved their goal, because I'm turning to you, because I remember you, because I'm nullifying myself to you. Nullify myself to you could be doing a mitzvah that I wasn't doing until now. There's so many things God wants from us. We're so lucky. We have so many ways of nullifying ourselves. Because every time you do a mitzvah, you do a commandment, that's an act of nullification. Like we were speaking before with Orly was saying her Yom Kippur success story, and Bella was sharing her attempting a Yom Kippur story. And it's a process. It's a process for all of us. But who naturally decides not to eat or drink for 25 hours, you know? Even a mitzvah that's not hard for you. Let's say there's a mitzvah to have guests, and you enjoy having guests. So you're hosting guests, and you're doing God's will, and you enjoy it. It does make a difference. You're still doing God's will. You're still nullified to him. That's still an act of nullification. Now, let's say it's something that's hard for you. Let's say it's something that's difficult for you. Like you have to wait 6 hours after eating meat before you can eat dairy. It's hard for you to remember in 6 hours. Who remembers what I ate 6 hours ago and this and that? It's hard. I think I remember Orly said when she went kosher, she just dropped one of them. Maybe dairy. I don't remember which one you said you dropped completely. Just made it simple. But so the only reason I'm remembering, wait, I ate at 12 o'clock, my lunchtime, I had something meat because now it's 5 o'clock, but I can't have dairy. I'm only doing that because there's a God and that's his will. So that's an act of nullification to him. So sometimes nullification is like, well, I wouldn't choose to on my own put little boxes on my door frames. Wouldn't be my idea of interior decorating, but not a big deal. Or it could be, oh my gosh, it's a big deal. I have a lot of people walk in my house and they're all divergent cultures, and maybe it's a statement that I'm not so comfortable with, and maybe it's really hard for me to do that. But if it's easy for you, or if it's hard for you, it's still an act of nullification. Because the only reason I'm doing this is because it's God's will. And if it's really difficult for you, it's an even greater act of nullification. And every single act of nullification is your way of saying, God, I'm submitting to you. God, I'm submitting to your authority. God, I'm aware and accept you. And I can accept it with joy. That's what actually I was feeling a lot over the Sukkot holiday. especially when I was in New York for the intermediate days from Thursday through early Monday morning. And they have like dancing on the streets, thousands of people, no exaggeration, till 6 a.m. 6 a.m. the streets are full. And I was feeling it's such a beautiful celebration of Jewish joy and Jewish pride. I remember what Chava had spoken once. We spoke about this concept of like how a lot of people, if they're secular and they could grow up feeling like, oh, I'm a Jew, that's such a burden. Oh, you know, it makes it so difficult, especially people that were in Russian. It made it very difficult. And even like in America, where officially it's not as difficult, but it still could be somewhat difficult because you're a Jew. And even an Orthodox Jew could have this feeling of like, okay, God, I believe in you, I'm serving you, but it's a burden. And I felt over the holiday, as the people were singing and dancing on the streets all night long, it was such a celebration of being Jewish. It was such a celebration of having a relationship with God. So why am I bringing this in? Because I don't want nullification. I don't want the concept of nullification to sound like this negative process, like, okay, God, you're God. I got a lot of raging waters in my life, so I'm giving into you through gritted teeth. It could be very joyous. It could be very beautiful. It could be like so special that I can have this relationship with you. And I can be nullified to you by such a simple act. By turning to you and praying, I'm expressing your God. This is your will. By making a blessing before I eat. By choosing to eat certain foods and not to eat other foods, because this is your will. So I'm nullifying myself to you, which is, again, as we're saying, the point of the process. But I can nullify myself with joy, with pride, that I can have this relationship with God. That's a very special gift, that we're very gifted. We're very blessed that we can have this relationship with God. So that was one idea from the Torah portion. And it's a little bit late, but I want to share another idea. I had this feeling I want to get to more than two. This is from after the whole story, post the flood. Though the flood takes up the bulk of the Torah portion, but there are some other things that happen afterwards. This is actually a concept from a very not positive story, but it's a very powerful concept. I know we've discussed it at various points over the many years of this class, but here's literally the Torah portion that we have the source for it, so I wanted to bring it in. So we have the flood, we have the survivors. They come out, they see a new world. Imagine the entire world is washed away, literally. The earth itself, the top layer of earth was washed away. Everything's washed away. It was a new world they saw. Noah, Naamah, his 3 sons, their wives. Og was hanging out on the ark. They now are possessors of a new world. And it says that Noah went and he planted grapes. That he had taken the vines with him into the ark. He planted these grapes and the grapes grew and he made wine and he drank too much wine. And unfortunately, one of his sons came and did one of 2 horrible acts with him. The sages differ on what it was. It might have been both, but very horrible acts they did with him when he was in this very vulnerable state. And so here he was, drunk, violated, on the floor. And his 2 other sons, hearing about this, want to go and cover their father, to give respect to their father that was so violated. And it says that they walked in backwards and their faces were backwards, not to see the nakedness of their father. And then the verse adds, and the nakedness of their father they didn't see. And the question is, and the principle behind the question is that the Torah doesn't waste words. It's not into flowery, nice phrases. So they're walking backwards and their faces are turned backwards. So they shouldn't see the nakedness of their father. So why does the verse add, and the nakedness of the father they didn't see? So to explain this concept, it's based on an idea explained by the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement, that everything we see is giving us a message. And when we see good things, when we see positive things, when we see godly things, that's one type of impression. And if we see something negative, it's a different type of message, and it's a negative message. And therefore, we have to be very, very, very careful to guard our eyes and our ears from any absorbing of anything negative. Like, think of this situation. They knew what their father looked like. They knew what had happened to their father. But they were so careful that they didn't want to see him in that situation because that would be so disrespectful to him. But then the verse goes a step further to say this extra level of care for them not to see the nakedness of their father. Because it wasn't only for Noah's honor. It wasn't only they didn't want to see him in this disgraced condition because that wouldn't be disrespectful. That would be disrespectful to him. It was also for themselves. To guard themselves from seeing something inappropriate would have a consequence on them. It would be an impact on them. That's a very, very powerful lesson in this Torah portion about how careful we have to be with what our eyes see. Because, sometimes, we live in a world where a lot of not great things are going on and a lot of inappropriate things are right there in front of our eyes. So what can we do about it? It's not our fault. We live in this world. But the Torah portion is saying that the sons of Noah were so careful. They weren't just careful for Noah's honor. They were careful for themselves because they knew themselves that seeing something like that would have an impression on them. What we see indelibly imprints on us and affects us. And even though we had no choice and we weren't trying to, but it really makes an impression. Even also, we see also from our Torah portion, this very similar concept in terms of the language. We go back. This was at the end of the Torah portion, the beginning of the Torah portion, when it's talking about the animals that marched into Noah was not the greatest veterinarian in the world, and he was not the greatest zoologist, and he didn't go around the world collecting all the species. The animals came to him, literally, like you might have seen the pictures. That's literally what happened. Sometimes those pictures are inaccurate. Here, it's literally what happened. The animals came in pairs, male and female, to promulgate the species. Twos. Imagine 2 lions got taken, all the rest of them perished. 2 bears, all the rest of them perished. So the purest of the species came because any one of those animals that had done anything inappropriate would not be allowed into the ark. The ark would not absorb them. So from every species came a set of 2, but some animals were 7. Why were the 7? Because the pure ones, the kosher ones, came 7 for Noah to, after the flood, offered up as an offering to God. So when we're speaking about this in the Torah portion, it doesn't say the pure and impure, like the kosher and not kosher. It says the pure, and then in a very long-winded way for the Torah that likes to be cryptic, it says, and those animals that are not pure, instead of saying impure. And it's for the exact same reason. The same way when we look at something impure, it affects us. And therefore we want to really guard our eyes not to see things that could affect us. Also what we say. Now, of course, sometimes we have to be, like medically, legally precise and say impure. We have to be clear. But if we don't have to, then even saying the word impure, why say that if you could say that which is not pure? Again, just being conscious that every word we say impacts us. Everything we see impacts us. And really taking this lesson and really applying it in our own lives of like, where can I cleanse my glasses? What am I seeing that maybe I don't have to be seeing? Or maybe sometimes I have no choice. But if I have a choice, What words are tripping off my lips that maybe I could find a different way to say it, a more refined way to say it, a more delicate way to say it. Maybe I have the luxury, maybe I don't. This connects, of course, to the whole concept that everything that we see for a reason. As I said, the Baal Shem Tov speaks about this idea, and I know we've discussed it in class more than once, that God sometimes shows you something negative as a lesson for you to understand what's going on inside yourself. Like sometimes if you have a flaw, and it's very hard for us to see our own flaws because we have this healthy, beautiful thing called self-love that covers over our own flaws. So God sometimes shows me someone else's flaws. I don't have self-love for him. So his flaws I see clearly. And you can say, wait a minute, why is God, who doesn't want me to see anything inappropriate, why is he showing me someone else's problems? Maybe because it's my own. Maybe because I wouldn't see it in myself. But that whole thought concept of like, why am I seeing this flaw? I must be seeing this flaw because either it's my own flaw and my own self-love wouldn't allow me to see it, or maybe there's something I can do to help the other person. But the whole reason I have that question, why is God showing me this, is because if something's not appropriate, if something's not pure and good, my eyes shouldn't be seeing it. So why would God have me see something negative? Only as a lesson for myself to grow, or as a lesson for me to help someone else grow. But if those two options don't exist, why would God have me unnecessarily see something negative? Because if I see something negative, it's going to impact me. It's going to affect me. It's interesting in another thought of the Torah speaks about the woman who was a sota, the woman who was suspected of adultery. And then right after that is the portion of the Nazir, the man who takes a vow to abstain from wine and grapes and all that stuff. And the link between the two Torah portions is explained by the sages, is because if a person sees a sota, or this woman suspected of adultery, that could already make a negative impression on him. And to overcome that, he should become this Nazir. And, a Nazir's idea of abstinence, abstaining from the wine, abstaining from the grapes, abstaining to cleanse himself from any impression he might have picked up by seeing this situation of this woman suspected of adultery. You could say, wow, that's pretty far. You didn't do anything wrong. You happened to see this woman. It's not like she was doing anything wrong. You saw her either. Everything you see makes an impression. So why would God show me something negative? Only if it's for my own growth, for me to recognize something in myself that my beautiful, healthy self-love doesn't let me know. Or perhaps it's a situation that I could help. But if I can't help, and it's not to help me grow, God wouldn't have me see something negative. So I have to take the same care myself. Same way God is going to help me not see what I shouldn't see because it's not good for me. I have to also really look at myself and say, are there things I could do to not have to see things that are negative in this world? Because every negative thing you see impacts. And we're very susceptible, we're very vulnerable to those impacts. And that's why we really want to guard ourselves from what we see. And as we also guard ourselves from what we say. Any thoughts on this? Any questions?
Yes.
Any thoughts?
Yes. What about like innocent children? Like a parent, you do what you can. You don't let them see videos or whatever. Like you try to guard them, but they're gonna see things. They go to school, they talk to other kids. Like, how can you say that Hashem?
You do your best.
But I'm saying, how do you have Hashem say, oh, that it's gonna help them grow or something wrong in them when they're innocent children?
No,
They're innocent. They're being.
No, the idea of it's two ideas. The child that you're saying, like you're gonna make sure they don't see violence in a video, right? You don't want that to make an impression on them. And then they're in school and all the kids at school are talking about these violent videos. They're not hearing about that as a means of rectifying themselves or helping someone else. They're hearing about that because it's a world and we try to protect as much as we can, and sometimes we can't protect. But if you see a transgression, that's the idea. If you see someone else transgressing, and it's like, why would God have you see that? Well, to let you know about yourself, or perhaps a situation you can help someone else. But if it's like from a saying, yeah, perfect example, turn on your TV. Almost everything there's going to be something that's going to make a bad impression on you, violence, profanity, horrific relationships going on, all that stuff. None of that helps you. None of that's something that like lifts up your energy. It all pulls it way, way down. So that would be an easy example from a saying of how you could really work on guarding yourself to not just unnecessarily absorb the garbage of the world. But the idea of the Baal Shem Tov there was literally like, if you observe someone else sinning, and why would God have you see another person transgressing? Could be, I can help him. Could be, it's to tell me about my own sins. If it's not one of those two options, God wouldn't have me see another person transgressing, because it's like just a loss in terms of how it would affect me.
Mrs. Turner, what I'm saying is even also like, let's say a example that happened this summer. We went to walk near the beach by this park that we really like to go to, me and my kids. And my daughter, she's 3, so she's been learning, even before then about sneas. And she sees men and girls wearing, how they dress. And she says, "Mommy, why are they all naked?" And they're not naked, but they're pretty much naked, but like,
naked,
Mommy, why are they naked? And I'm like, oh, sweetie, like, just not look at them. They're not naked. They're just, just don't look. Like, let's try not to look. But like, what's the point in having a 3-year-old seeing that? You know what I mean? Like,
so then you as a mother should make a point not to walk in those directions in the summer.
well, I know, but even if you walk in the neighborhood, like there's still so many people that go without clothes, like men who wear without shirts and stuff. Like on my block alone, where I was living, there was literally, I remember when I was a kid, an old man who used to wear a bathing suit and no clothes, and he walk around. Like, it's disgusting, but for like a child, like, what's the point in a child seeing this? Like, how can you say that this is, you know what I mean?
I hear what you're
Like,
saying, and I don't have an answer besides this. We could chalk it up to the exile. But the only answer I do have is there's things you can protect and things you can't protect. The people walking on your block in their bathing suits, you can't protect. But in the summer, walking in certain areas that are beaches, you can protect. So we have to try our best to be vigilant. We're, not just the children, ourselves as well, shouldn't see people basically naked because it's not good for us either. We lost the sensitivity of a child. A child is so pure and so sensitive. They're like, why are people walking around naked? And we're like, oh yeah, whatever, people walk around naked, whatever. It's great to hear it from a child because a child reminds you that like, that doesn't seem very appropriate for people to walk around naked. So it's good for us to hear from the child to remember that, right, we don't want to see people walk around naked. So I can't protect myself from the people on my block, but I can protect myself from the people on the beach. So that's I got to find a different path, maybe a bike trail where, perhaps you're not going to be dressed the same as we dressed on a beach. So what we can do, we do. What we can't do, we say, okay, God, you run the world and this is what you want us to experience. And this is for us to grow and for us to come closer to you. And we accept it all. It's all part of his plan. But what we can protect ourselves from, we do. So it's sort of like what we can do, we do. And what we can't do, we know that God is doing his thing, even in things that seem so random, like, well, there's somebody on your block that walks around in a bathing suit all day. Like, no, that's not random. That's part of God's plan. He knows what he's doing. You were supposed to see that. You were supposed to react to that. That was part of it. But where you can protect yourself, you do. Anyone else? Any other thoughts on this? Any other questions or thoughts on this? I thought it was just a very powerful idea because we live in a world where there's so much that we're bombarded with, and the impression, we don't realize it could seem so not affecting us at all, but it really, 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 really does. Like, it really does. And that's why it's such a precious thing to try to guard our speech and our eyes as much as possible. Okay, wow, it's late, but I'm going to give at least one law on Shabbos. So we're up to the idea of plowing, and you could say plowing. I don't usually plow, so that's not very relevant. But there's a few ideas here that I saw that related to what you might end up doing. So I'm passing it on for people that have something sort of like plowing. One thing you're not allowed to do is, if you have a backyard with earth, with grass, not just cement, you can't drag furniture over that earth or grass on the Sabbath. I mean, your intention isn't to plow. Your intention is to like drag the bench like it's Sukkot, and you're outside and you're dragging a bench. But you can do that on cement. You can't do that on the earth or the dirt or the grass, because you would be like making grooves. That would be like, so to speak, plowing that earth. For some reason, they say if there was like a barrel, you can't roll it over the earth to wherever you want it to go to. No, you have to carry it, because also it could be like creating a smooth path. That could also be a precursor to plowing. For the same reason, we're not allowed to sweep. I don't know if any of you would think of sweeping the dirt, but if you would, I can think of some of my neighbors are like that. If you would, you can't do it. Same reason, you can't smooth the earth, because that would be prepping it for plowing. Same reason, children play games like on the ground. So children can't play like on the dirt on the Sabbath, because also they're going to smooth the ground to play their jacks or whatever they play, and you're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. One thing you are allowed to do, though, interestingly enough, and then we'll end at that point, is for people that have children and grandchildren around, you would be allowed to push a baby stroller on the grass or ground or earth, even though you could say that would also be like impacting it, because we're so that no, the weight of the stroller would just be like compressing the earth. That would be doing the opposite. It wouldn't be preparing the earth for plowing, it would actually making it harder. So therefore, pushing a baby wagon, God willing, you shall have the joy of pushing your children or grandchildren's baby wagons, baby carriages, that you're allowed to do on the Shabbos, but all the other stuff you are not allowed to do, even though you're not a farmer and you're not thinking of prepping the soil for planting, but any of those things we said actually could be prepping the soil for planting, and therefore we do not do them as well. Any questions on any of that, which I said sort of quickly? Okay, thank you so much for joining. So if anyone has any requests, any ideas of what they would like to learn, you could put it on our group, you could send me a WhatsApp, you could send me a text, and be very open to what people are looking to learn. Thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad for everybody that had a meaningful holiday, or more meaningful holiday, an easier fast, a more meaningful fast, an attempting fast, a more joyous, more calm, more centered Sukkot or Simchat Torah. I'm so happy, and it should just continue, because the energy we took then is like putting it in our suitcases to live off of for the year. So we should all continue to feel that for the year. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Yeah.